Because people were saying, like, how could you give people this false hope? How could you tell them that they're going to get better? You know, if people have had this for 10 years, why would you mislead them like this? And I'm like, man, I thought you're against this illness. If you're so against it, why do you sound like it's PR team? Like you're defending it. Like I'm trying to help you get out of it. So you sound like it's your sponsor or something. Like, why do you keep defending it? I'm trying to get you out of this. So I just found it very interesting and ironic.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I have a really awesome video for you today. I am here. I'm so excited to be talking to Miguel Bautista. I'm sure many of you already know him, but for those of you who might be new to Miguel, he is the author of the newly released book, Thriver, Not Survivor, How to Beat Chronic Fatigue Syndrome. And he's also the creator of the program Recovery Jumpstart. So welcome, Miguel. It's so great to have you back on the channel again. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to be here. It's always great talking to you. I think when we talked first, like 10 months ago, that's what really helped my channel grow and get the information out to more people. And people loved our interview. So I'm excited to be back for round two.
Yeah, this is amazing. Since you were first on the channel, and for those of you that haven't seen it, I'll link it up on the screen here. I highly recommend you check it out. But yeah, so many people have since told me that they've since reached out to you and worked with you and how helpful it's been. So it's just really exciting to be able to chat again. It's funny, we were both laughing before. We're like, how many videos we've done? And we still get nervous before these.
Yeah, very nervous. Like I'm kind of shaking right now. I'm not going to lie, but
yeah, we're doing this before the video started. I'm shaking it off, but we're saying we really care about this and we know how important this is. So of course we really want to make sure that, we're putting out the most helpful and, hopeful stuff for you guys. For people who aren't aware, can you give us sort of the fast version, if that's possible, of your own health journey to this point? And then for people who want to get more detail, they can watch the full video that I'll put in the video description.
Right now I'm 27 years old, but I developed CFS. I didn't know it at the time, but it was CFS when I was about 19 years old. And for about 4.5 years, I struggled with debilitating symptoms, was bedridden many times, had to go off work. I came back to work feeling like I was better, then I'd get even worse. So I went back and forth like that for 4.5 years until it got very, very bad to the point where I was completely bedridden, had to live with my grandparents, couldn't walk, needed help eating, needed to be pushed around in a wheelchair just to get to doctor's appointments on days where I couldn't even leave the house. But yeah, I dealt with many, many, many symptoms. I think at my peak, I had like over 40 symptoms. Yeah, I dealt with some extreme symptoms for quite a while. Fatigue, lots of chronic pain. But when I got really bad, I was bedridden. Like I said, I was bedridden for about 8 months, living with my grandparents, and then taking all these supplements. Body continued to decline, too much stress on it, and ended up in the hospital for about 2 months, where first month, brutal, ICU. They couldn't find anything, tested me for literally every test you could go for. They gave me different medications, supplements, nothing was working. And they transferred me to another part of the hospital where luckily I won the lottery and met this doctor who taught me about how to recover and everything that was going on. Taught me about the nervous system, how it was just a hypersensitive nervous system issue. It wasn't really anything beyond that. So once I realized that, I was able to start piecing my life back together. I went from completely bedridden to being able to sit up in a wheelchair. Then I was able to move from a wheelchair to a walker, then a walker to actually standing on my own 2 feet. And then within about a month, I was able to go back out into the world where I started to, rebuild my life. So it was a crazy journey. Those 4.5 years felt like 4.5 decades. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to how time goes by very slow when you're just feeling symptoms every day and not really knowing what's going to happen next. So I go much deeper into my story in this book that I wrote, which should be out now. But I also share a lot of these stories on my channel. If people want to get more details, also in our previous interview.
But yeah, it's just your story all the ones that I hear are incredible. I'm sure you feel the same, but yours really struck me. And I credit yours as one of the only ones one of the only people I've talked to who recovered through, I say through conventional medicine because you were at a conventional medicine hospital, but my understanding is the doctor that was treating you was not practicing conventional medicine. So I feel like it's kind of a loophole.
Yeah, he was doing a lot. He was using conventional medicine, but he also knew the other side of this, which is, how your nervous system works, how your brain plays a role in healing your body, especially with this kind of illness, which a lot of doctors, they would just look at the symptoms and try to treat the symptoms. Oh, you feel tired? Well, let's give you some stuff to give you more energy. Vitamin B12 injections and IVs. I know you did a lot of those, Raelan. But all these supplements to treat individual symptoms when you should be treating the root cause of this. Obviously, after ruling out all other potential illnesses, if all the tests come back negative, then you can pretty much point the finger at the hypersensitive nervous system, and that's usually what you have to treat overall. But once that starts functioning normally again, then he pretty much told me that this is the golden ticket out of this. If you get your nervous system functioning properly again, guess what? Your fatigue goes back to normal. Your pain goes away. All these weird symptoms of heart palpitations and shortness of breath, all that fixes itself. I was like, okay. First doctor who told me he could actually fix me, and the first doctor I truly, truly believed, because I had seen too many doctors before who promised me the world, and then obviously I got worse. So it was very lucky. So I feel it's my responsibility to definitely get this information out to as many people as possible.
I feel like that's a unique experience in itself that you had doctors that were promising you the world, because I feel like most of us got doctors that weren't promising us much.
Yeah. I mean, most of them had no idea. I mean, let's be real. They were like, right. You're fine. Just go home, get some rest, drink some Gatorade, drink some electrolytes. But there were a handful, like especially naturopaths, especially the ones that were very expensive. Those are the people saying like, yeah, we got the solutions. You just got to buy this and this and this and this. Next thing you know, I'm spending tens of thousands, and it helped temporarily, but didn't really fix it for good. I ended up getting worse actually after a lot of this stuff, because I was always looking outside of myself for the solution, when really the solution, a lot of it was internal. It was my own brain. So yeah, it was a very interesting journey.
I'm curious because it's been a few years since my recovery as well. And when I first recovered, I had a story of my recovery that I told people, which was my truth at the time. But as time passes and the more I learn, and the more time I've had to reflect and the more insight I have, I see some things a little bit differently, or there's some things that maybe I didn't give enough credit. So I'm just curious, now that you've had all this time and now that you do all this work, in the ME/CFS and Long COVID and related conditions community, do you look at any things differently about your journey, or have you had any insights since that you didn't have maybe a few years ago?
Yeah, definitely. At the time when I was making leaps and bounds in my recovery, I developed this mindset that was so indifferent to any symptoms, especially like going on these emotional roller coasters, because every time I would have symptom flare-ups, I'd go on this emotional roller coaster. So during that time period, getting out of the hospital and recovering, my emotions were like flat. Like nothing would really excite me too much. Nothing would get me down too much. I was just like a freight train. I'm like, I'm recovering. I'm just living life. Oh, emotions come by. Nah, doesn't matter. So looking back now, I feel like at that time that was very helpful for my recovery. But it's something that you can't really take with you into other areas of life, because yes, there are things that you do need to get emotional about, like whether it's relationships or work or things like that, where you can't just brush things aside like you can do with all the symptoms and just live your life free. So I think that's one thing that recently I've changed my perspective on, that you don't need to be so extreme in kind of swatting away all negative thoughts, because most of the thoughts you have when you're sick, they are negative. It's usually about symptoms, but when it becomes a habit, you can tend to swat away everything. So then you don't really address real problems, whether it's in business or anything like that. So that's the one thing that I've learned over the years, is to be a bit more balanced, not as indifferent to everything, which is something that I developed as I was recovering.
I was thinking about it, like with my own recovery. I forgot about this, but I haven't been giving credit somewhere where credit is due. And I had read a book, in the first couple of years when I got sick, I read hundreds of books. And then I just kind of gave up because none of them seemed to really help me. And then for a few years, I was just sort of coasting, experimenting with different things, but mostly just trying to survive. But every once in a while, I'd poke my head out and see if there was anything new. And a few years into my illness, I read this book. And I had, at this point, never heard of anyone recovering from chronic fatigue syndrome anywhere. I didn't, it wasn't a thing. But this was a book written by someone who had recovered. And during my time being unwell, of course, when I was partly recovered already, because I wouldn't have been able to do this earlier on, but I started scuba diving, and scuba diving isn't an intense, activity for healthy people. And I had enough, energy at the time that I was able to do it. And I noticed with pushing myself with this, I started getting stronger, and I had to be careful, and I had to take days off and breaks and rest. But over time, I could do more and more, and I didn't fully understand it. Was it the sunshine? Was it because I was so happy? Was it the weather? Was it the water? And then I read this book and I thought, oh, it was this really gradually pushing my body. And that, gave me this idea when I put together my own recovery sort of program for myself, that this movement piece was important and was going to work for me because I'd seen it in my body. And then somehow I saw the cover a while back and I couldn't believe it. It was Toby Morrison who wrote the book. And of course, now I'm aware of Toby Morrison. I have been for a long time, but I didn't know that he had written that book. So this is my first public official. Thank you, Toby. That book was massively helpful to me. Shout out to Toby. But, it's just the little pieces that you don't all see until you kind of have the time to process them and look back and really figure out kind of what's going on.
Yeah. With the slowly kind of going outside your comfort zone or adding some physical activity, like you were doing the scuba diving, and I've been watching your videos all morning. So you were doing backpacking stuff. So there would be some stairs here and there, or they would be a little bit longer than usual. And you just so happened to end up walking more than you were expecting. But in just doing that, pushing a little bit outside your comfort zone, your body was able to become stronger. And the way I see it is, because I used to be a personal trainer, it's almost the same trajectory as something like fitness or exercise. Because when you're going to the gym, when you're lifting weights, you're adding stress on the body, and your body adapts to that stress. So there's something called specific adaptation to impose demand. So your body will actually adapt to the stress placed on it. But if it's too much stress, then, when you're working out, you're going to get injured. You pull a muscle, strain something, tear something, joint goes out. With recovery, that injury is kind of like a crash or your nervous system going haywire. So with recovery, it's very similar. You're slowly increasing the stimulus you place on your body, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, because these are all different buckets of stimulus, but increasing the stimulus in the proper amounts very slowly so that your body builds up a tolerance to it. And it happens over time, and you can't rush it. You do need to give your body breaks. And just like when you work out, sometimes you feel sore when you work out, right? Especially when you start, but then it becomes normal. And that's actually a sign that your body is adapting to the muscles or to the muscle growth. So same thing in recovery. You add some stimulus to your body, you're going to feel some kind of symptoms. You might feel more tired, but that's when you just got to take your foot off the gas pedal and let your body recalibrate itself. And it will do it if you allow it to. But if you feel the symptoms and you start stressing about it, you're just adding more stress to the nervous system so it doesn't have a chance to heal. So that's kind of how I see it. Obviously, if you push too far in adding activity, you're going to have some injury. But this is an injury like on your nervous system. But this is not permanent. It's just like your nervous system kind of freaks out. You feel a bunch of symptoms. You feel like you have a setback. But I see them as very similar trajectories in terms of, progressing. Improving your nervous system and also improving your fitness level. It's very, very similar.
Yeah, because very much a lot of it for me, because I really wanted exercise to be helpful, but every time I tried, even small amounts, I got so sick. So I started being terrified of exercise and having such a negative association. And even every time I would try again, I'd be stressed, even thinking, am I going to be in bed all day because of this 5 minutes? But scuba diving was happy, and I didn't think of it as exercise. So it was like I snuck it in there, and I was slowly pushing my body. Or like you said, I'd have to climb some stairs or maybe like ride a bicycle for a little bit. So for one, it was just not having that stress association with the activity. As soon as I thought of it as exercise, I went into a complete state of stress. And then the second thing is I didn't understand how gradual that had to be. I just being such such an extreme exerciser prior to getting unwell. I mean, sometimes I would work out up to 3 hours or more per day.
Yeah.
So when I tried doing 5 minutes of exercise and it would make me sick, I'd get frustrated, but I didn't understand that 5 minutes was too much. I just I hadn't quite figured out how to go gentle in that small, gradual, just slightly outside of, what you're capable of or your comfort zone is. So,
yeah. And what I find is, I think the reason why exercise, even something small, can trigger major symptoms. Sometimes it's not even the exercise itself, but it's the anticipation leading up to it, where by the time you're picking up the weights or you're getting down to do a push-up or do your squats, you're already worked up. You've already been in a heightened state of stress. So by the time you do it, you're going into it kind of a wreck. So you don't really set yourself up to win. It's kind of like when I used to have doctor's appointments and I was so sick that just getting downstairs was a struggle. So to even think that I had to go out of my house, go into a car, get out of the car, walk into the appointment, just thinking about that would stress me out. So let's say the appointment was 2 weeks away. I'd literally count down the days mentally and be like, okay, 10 more days, 8 more days, 5 more days, 3 more days. And then the last 3 nights before the doctor's appointment, I wouldn't be able to sleep. Well, I couldn't sleep anyways, but I was just so nervous. So by the time that day came, I was already in ruins just thinking about it without even doing anything. So, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that too.
I can relate to that this week. That's another thing about these chats is you think that the learning is done or that it no longer applies, but all of this is so relevant to life. Every single conversation I have like this, I'm like taking mental notes. I'm like, oh, I'm still doing that. Oh, this explains this. Because I know it's not exactly the same, of course, when you're healthy, but it's that same thing. If I have a really busy week or if I have like a crazy Friday at the end of the week, all week long, I'm stressed leading up to it. And by Friday morning comes, I'm exhausted and the day hasn't even started.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
It never stops being relevant. Almost everything that I've learned through my recovery still serves me today and still is something that I have to work on every day. I had, once I was recovered, I got to this naive place where I thought like, okay, I'm here now. I've learned it all. I know everything. I know how annoying that sounds, but I think I was in a space of just like, it's just like growth boot camp. By the time you recover, you've learned so much. Like, okay, now I'm embarking on the rest of my life with all this knowledge and I'm never going to make those mistakes again. And I've got it mostly figured out.
Yeah.
It's a constant journey of learning and backslides and remembering to keep implementing those things that you learned. And I think you can get away with not doing some of them for a while. So then you start to think that it's okay and, forget that it all builds up over time. So
totally. And I think there's like this misconception and that we all have when we're sick, that once we're better, once we're recovered, life is going to be great. There's going to be no more stress, no more things going wrong. And it's just going to be great. It's going to be all positive, but that's not the case. Like no matter what stage you are at in life, there's going to be difficult decisions. There's going to be stressful times. There's going to be things that happen outside of your control that can cause you stress. The only difference is when you're sick, everything is just amplified. Your emotions are amplified. So it seems a lot worse. But if I look at my life right now, it's a lot more chaotic than when I was sick, for sure. But I'm able to handle that stress a lot better because I know I've primed my mind to just be very solution focused. So when curveballs happen, when life throws things at me, I know that worrying about stuff or being anxious about things that may or may not happen or things that have happened and thinking back, like, what if I did this and that? I know it's just not beneficial. So that's something I learned in recovery as well, is just how powerful our mind is. Our mind is so powerful that it can get to the point where stress can actually equal physical pain in our body. And when I say mind, I don't mean like it's all in your head. It's literally in your brain. There are things happening in your brain. So I think when a lot of people hear that doctors say, or people like me say, yes, the mindset is important, they think it's just in your mind, but no, it's actually physically in your brain. There are neural pathways that are being, that your neurons are traveling down that are triggering pain and worry and anxiety. And it's just stuck in that loop. So it is a physical thing going on in the brain.
Yeah. I would hope by now that no one out there is thinking that anyone is saying that positive thinking is going to get you out of this, or you can just wish your way out of this. It's a very real, for many people, seems to be a very real neurological issue that requires addressing as part of their recovery plan. You know, because I think a lot of people seem to get sort of stuck, myself included, you know, somewhere around 70% recovered, or we get to a place and we can't seem to get past it. And I think, at least for me, my issue there is the same issue that I still have now today in my life. It's that we learn how to manage and cope in a sort of bubble. And when I was very sick, my bubble was very small. And as that bubble expanded, I had to learn how to cope and manage new things and new stressors. And I had to unlearn old habits for dealing with those things. And I had to find new ways for facing those. And, you know, as you get healthier, the more healthy you get, the more of the world comes back and the more you take on. And I think, you know, number one, it can be easy for those things to take over and take all the energy that could and should be going to your recovery because you're sort of functioning. And then also number two is that you've learned the skills to deal with where you were in the previous however many steps, but it's a whole new level of skills to where you are now. So that's how it's been for me, even to like this day, this week, where every time I face something new, you know, I have to figure out how do I approach this now? And it's that whole, like, you can't teach an old dog new tricks thing. I don't believe that, but I get where it's coming from, because when I have 30 years of ingrained reactions to things and ways of handling things, it's way harder than I thought it was going to be to get rid of those. It's very easy for me to fall back into people pleasing, into, you know, working myself to the bone, into defining my worth from my productivity. And it's just, I want so badly to get it all right, but it's just with every stage of health and sickness, I think there's always adjustment and learning new skills and figuring out how to navigate things, which is a daily thing.
Totally. And this is something we talk a lot about in the program for people who are like well on their way to recovery. A big question I get asked a lot is, if you have a type A personality and that's just your natural trait, do you think you can recover from something like CFS? Because I had a really powerful type A personality. I was always a go-getter. I know you were too. I was always a high achiever. I always wanted to be doing things, and not just a few things, like 10 things at a time, or else I just felt bored. I needed that stimulus. Yeah. So I think even type A people, it mainly comes down to being able to control that trait versus letting that trait control you. Because there are times when I'll work for like 4 days and go super hard, 12 hours each day, get like, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours of sleep at night. But I know on that 5th and 6th day, I'm taking my foot off the gas pedal because I know that's not sustainable. So I'm able to kind of turn that dial down on that specific personality trait. And I think being able to turn that dial down has been a game changer for my life, because before, that trait used to run me. I didn't have a choice. I had to work. Even if I wanted to relax on the weekend, if I was laying in bed, my mind wasn't really relaxing. I was still running through this to-do list, and I was never really in relaxation mode. And if I did try to relax, I felt guilty. So I think having that personality trait or these habits, it's like a double-edged sword. It's a famous quote by, Uncle Ben in Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. And that's kind of like how it is with a type A personality. Even if you're a perfectionist, like, that is actually a powerful trait if you know how to use it to your advantage. So a perfect analogy, there's this guy in Recovery Jumpstart. He has a company that builds like some satellite technology, some space technology, like groundbreaking stuff. So of course, engineering, you have to be a perfectionist, or else things start to fall out of the sky, literally, right? If one bolt is loose, if one part is out of place, yes, that could be a disaster. But at the same time, he found himself looking at chairs and being like, why is that chair designed like that? The leg should be out this far. It should be a different material. So it's learning to turn that switch on and off, depending on what you're doing. And now he's learned that, and he's doing phenomenal. But to be able to turn that switch on and off, I think it's one of the biggest things I learned in recovery. Did you find that as well? Like, because I know you've always been a type A person, like always doing stuff, but now you're able to actually take your foot off the gas pedal and like, just take it easy.
Yes. No.
Sometimes depends, right?
I feel like I'm a broken record. I feel like I'm forever saying I have been really running myself into the ground, but I've recently become aware of that. I have better boundaries. I'm taking better care of myself. And it is true, but then it's everything in my life is exactly like everything I've ever said about my chronic fatigue syndrome recovery. It's like that jagged line. It's not like this linear line to my perfect self. It's some weeks or months I'm doing well, and then I'll have a month where I just feel like I've forgotten everything that I know. So, but I remind myself all the time to step back and look at the overall trajectory, my favorite word, and see that, yeah, I am learning. I am getting better. I'm not lying when I say I'm figuring things out. But yeah, it's a journey, and I don't think I'll ever get to a place where it's like, yeah, I've got this perfectly now.
You never really arrive at that place where it's like, yes, we're good to go. We don't need to learn any new tricks in the book, and we are good, smooth sailing. No, never really get to that place.
This is what my whole life I've been waiting for that place. I really have.
It's a lie.
I know.
It's a lie we've been told. I've learned to embrace it and not so much put negative labels on experiences. I just see it as experiences, right?
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's something that also for me translates from when I was sick and even to now, is that piece of the journey. And I was in a yoga class this week, and the very young yoga instructor, who was wise beyond her years, said her intention for the class was patience, because it's something she's struggling with. And she's always really fixated on where she's trying to get to. Like it's taking away from being able to be in the moment. And she said, patience isn't being able to wait for something. It's being able to find happiness while you're waiting. And I'm like, wow, yeah,
absolutely.
So, and it's I think it's true always in life.
It's not so much about what you do, but it's about how you do them during recovery. Because you could be doing the simplest of things, but you could be enjoying it. You could be appreciating it. You could be, fully present, actually enjoying that moment, versus before where, if we're in a stress state, we might be going through the motions, but we're not really feeling it. We're not really there. We're stressed out about our symptoms, or worrying about if we're ever going to get better. I hope I don't crash on this and that. So it's more so about like how you do things. Right. A lot of it is how you do things, especially just the simple things in life. It's how you do them that I think makes the biggest difference.
One thing that I'd really love to jump into in this video, because one of the main goals with my channel here is to spread hope, and not just hope, but concrete evidence that people can and do get past really significant, severe chronic illness. So I know in the time since we last spoke, you've worked with a lot of people in your Recovery Jumpstart program, and we'll share more details on that at the end of the video. But could you share some of the stories of, recovery and transformation that you've seen and the people that you've been working with?
Absolutely. So immediately, one story comes to mind. It's a more recent one, and I actually posted about this, a couple months ago on my channel. His name's Mitsuo. So when I hopped on a call with him back in April, he was broken, feeling pretty hopeless. I think he had over 30 symptoms, seen over 40 doctors. He even said he had over 100 blood tests. And I was like, come on, 100 blood tests? That's quite a bit. And he showed me pictures, and they would take like 30 blood tests at a time. This is down in Brazil. And I was like, holy cow, that's insane. So when he joined, he was 97% bedridden, like literally 97%. On our application call, he was struggling to sit up in bed. And I was like, it's okay, man, you can lie down. Don't worry about it. And even looking at a screen, his eyes hurt. Fast forward, a couple months into the program, he had a lot of pain. So he was doing the brain training for chronic pain relentlessly. He was reminding himself literally like 1,000 times per day that it's just my nervous system. It's just my nervous system. He was doing the homework in the program. And then within a couple months, he was able to start seeing his friends. Like, he still had some symptoms, but he was able to go to the movie theaters with them. And then he actually went on a mini family vacation to some beach in Brazil. And he was able to go jog on the beach and then watch the sunset, see the stars at night, where 2 months prior, he was almost hopeless because he couldn't really get out of bed. So I think that's one of the stories that's so powerful. And when I posted his video, his dad actually commented in the YouTube comments, and he was just like, thank you so much, because we basically have our son back, and they had tried everything. And yeah, if you want to hear more of his story, like, he goes deeper into it on that video on my channel, but it's really touching. Like, I was getting teary eyed just watching it back. So I think seeing these principles put into practice and seeing it working for other people, not just myself, it's just so rewarding. And then there's another fellow, Junior. Last year, so 2021, he was just in and out of the hospital so many times, emergency room, panic attacks, really bad pain, felt like he was going to die. Didn't really know what to do. Ended up joining in January, and within a few months, he was working full time. Keep in mind, when he joined, he was basically bedridden. Well, not bedridden. He was couch ridden, on the couch the whole day. Could barely make it to his mailbox. Couldn't even make his own food. And within a few months, he was back to work full time, working from home from his computer, playing video games. So now, about 7 months later, he's working full time, playing video games, eating all the food he wants to, hanging out with his girlfriend, living life again. And he's done so well that I'm bringing him on as a coach next month, because that's how much better he's gotten. And it's just such an inspiring story to see, among other people in the program as well. But these are the ones that really stand out right now. So it's just really cool to see these principles working on other people. Because for me, when I first started this channel about a year ago, I was like, okay, maybe it's going to resonate with some people, because this stuff worked for me. It'll probably work for other people, but to see it really changing lives, I think it's one of the most fulfilling things. And it inspires me to continue doing this and getting this information out to more people. So yeah, those are just a couple stories of some people in the program.
That's incredible. While we're talking about Recovery Jumpstart, for people who are watching that aren't aware, what is this program, or what is it about this program that is helping people when they've been stuck and unsuccessful with their recovery for so long?
I think one of the biggest things, one of my main focuses for the program was I wanted to create a duplicatable process that can help people get better and increase the odds of success as much as possible, and base it on what got me better. At my worst, I was in the ICU, and I literally could not roll over in bed. Had to wear a blindfold all day, earplugs and noise canceling headphones over them because I was so sensitive. And they were actually injecting me with blood thinners every day because they didn't want me to get a blood clot. So I know what it's like to start from the absolute bottom of this, but I also know what it's like to work myself back up to being able to run on the beach and work full time and, eat great food. So I think throughout that whole process, I've learned many things, and I've tried to condense it into a very simplified approach to recovery, but also step by step, so people know what to focus on in their specific order, right? So I've tried to create kind of like a roadmap that can help people get unstuck on their recovery and just gain a lot of traction. It's actually interesting when people come to the program. A lot of them say, wow, I like how these videos in here are like 2 minutes long or 3 minutes long, because I thought it would be 10 minutes or 20 minutes. I'm like, no, that's the last thing we want. If I can say something in 2 sentences versus saying it in 1 minute, then I'll do it. Because I know people with CFS, a lot of brain fog is happening. You go on too long, they're going to forget it. So it's really simplifying it, but also the accountability is huge. The peer-to-peer accountability within the program and the support of the community. So everybody in the program, they're hand selected. Like, we have an application process. We have an application process to make sure people are a right fit for it. We want people who are ready for change, highly motivated, ready to, put in the work needed to recover, and they're going to add value to the group and just be a positive impact. You almost feel like you're part of a team. I think that's why it was a big decision I made to limit the program to only a certain number of people and not open the floodgates and have like hundreds of people join, because I wanted it to be like a very close group. So you do feel like you're part of a small team. Everybody knows everybody's names, and you are part of a team. You're no longer doing this alone when you come to this program. You have the help of myself, and have help from Junior, and help from other people in the community. But I think the mindset is everybody has that thriver mentality, right? And that's why I named the whole brand, which is Thrivers, right? Or Thrivers, not Survivors. Thrivers grow stronger because of adversity. Survivors just try to get through the adversity, but Thrivers become better because of it. So we want Thrivers in the program. That's what we look for. That's what I look for in people when bringing them to the program. And so the strong community, I think, is the biggest thing.
I'm so glad that there are people like yourself out there who are doing this hands-on work with people and giving people options for recovery, because, we definitely need it. I think a lot about how we have, unfortunately, millions of people in the world right now who are currently facing illnesses like chronic fatigue syndrome or, ME/CFS, fibromyalgia, long COVID, and similar conditions.
Yeah.
And we have more and more options out there for recovery. And we have more and more people every day who are recovering, which is incredible. But I'm wondering what you found, or what you think your opinion is on, what some of the barriers still are for people facing this illness. What's holding people back? What's keeping them from, finding what works for them and getting past this?
I think this is a really good question. And it goes deep, because I think one of the biggest fears, at least what I see in people, that prevents them from recovering is the fear. And after having this for so long, people have been struggling with this for months, years, sometimes decades. So they have already tried many, many different things to recover. They've seen many specialists, doctors, tried different treatments, spent a lot of money on things that didn't work. So that trust in their decision-making it's almost gone, because they've tried so many things before. So there's that big fear of, okay, what if I try this? Or what if I try something, not even just my program, but anything? Mm-hmm. What if I commit to this and try it and I get excited about it and then it doesn't work? I just don't have any more room for disappointment. So I think it's the fear of disappointment is what keeps people paralyzed, because the fear of disappointment, I think, is what paralyzes people. And I was there before, because I tried so many things. I put my trust in these doctors and specialists and naturopaths, and pretty much went into depth on these people's words that, they could help me in some way. And then when I just continued to decline, I think I developed some serious trust issues. So with anything, I can see how it's very hard to just commit to something, or even want to open up the wallet again, or even just be open to taking advice. Because, when you hear these programs saying, oh, we help this person do this and we can help you do this, you hear people promising you the world, but there's always that voice inside that says, what if this is just like those other 1,000 times? And, I totally get that. So I think sometimes there are places in life where you do have to take a leap of faith, and it comes down to these particular times where you don't really have an option. Like the only other option is to continue doing what you're doing, or continue staying stuck. Sometimes you do have to take a leap of faith and take another risk to try yet another thing. But it's just like that saying, don't stop 3 feet from gold, right? Just because you come all this way, you didn't come all this way just to come all this way, essentially. That's what I would say. Just find a program that is helpful for you. It's very difficult to do this on your own. Very few people have done it. It's possible. Like Raelan, I know you went traveling and that was part of your healing process. But for most people, having that community or having those few extra hands on deck is necessary, at least for the first little bit of recovery. You can't do this on your own. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think that's very good points. There used to be no options for recovery, and now there are so many, which is a good problem to have, but it can still be a problem. And it can also, aside from worrying about disappointment and all of that, it can be confusing, and you don't know which ones are credible, and you may have limited dollars to spend or no dollars to spend, and it can just be a lot. And some of them, for some of us, recovery has meant throwing away our ways of thinking about healing and about the way the body works. So it also requires an incredibly open mind. And I think some of the things that are working for people sound too simple. It's not that they're easy, but I think there's a tendency to feel like it's discrediting our illness or our condition to even admit that these things are working for some people, because it's like, well, how serious could it have been if a brain training program helped, or if meditating and getting sun and, all of that was it really, you really need to open your mind. Right? Yeah. And too simple. Like, don't insult me. I'm very sick. None of this is going to help what I've got. Maybe it's helping whatever you've got that must not have been real, but what I've got is real, and that's not going to be the answer. So I think there's just a lot. I mean, understandable resistance to some of the things that are helping for people. But I also think the plus side of where we are now is that we are in this information age. My mom had chronic fatigue syndrome for decades, and when she got sick, she had to go to the library. I want you watching right now, if you're not my age or older, then you don't have to imagine. But for most people, picture you're sick and your only resource after the doctor sends you away with nothing is to go to the library, a library with no computers, just books. And you just walk into this library and you try and find how you're going to heal yourself from this thing that the doctor knows nothing about. So at least now we are connected and we have information. A lot of it, sometimes too much information. But there's a lot out there. And not only do we have a lot of information, we have way more research happening right now than we've ever had on this illness. This pandemic has been a horrific thing, but it's had silver linings. And one of them is attention to what we've all been facing. So between that and all the people now that we know are recovering, and I'm sure you're seeing the same thing. It's not... The options for recovery seem endless. From what I'm seeing, there seem to be no hopeless cases. There are people recovering at every age after being sick for decades or only a few months, people who were bedridden or who had mild conditions, people who had all sorts of triggers and onsets and comorbidities. And I know it can be overwhelming and it can be a lot, but it's also, if you have to be facing something like this, it's also a really good time for it because we've never had more in front of us and more at our fingertips and more options, which is amazing.
I tell people when they reach out to me and they're like, well, what should I study? What should I look into for all this? I tell them, listen to the Brain's Way of Healing by Norman Doidge. That's a great book. And then I tell them, listen to only a handful of channels. And here's what you should listen to. My channel, listen to CFS Health, listen to Raelan, 100% listen to her, Heal with Liz, and Chronic Comeback, and then a handful of other ones. But do not go on the forums. Stay away from that stuff. Try to keep it positive. Listen to people who have recovered from this. That's who you want to be listening to. Don't go Googling the stuff because trust me, you won't. It's going to be hard to find any positivity on Google.
Our community is amazing and awesome and so supportive and some of the most amazing people I've ever encountered and met in my life. But we've also, have people who are suffering, people who are understandably jaded, people who are hurt, people who are lashing out, and people who are skeptical. And so, you really have to be careful of what you expose yourself to. And it's actually one of the things I wanted to ask you about. And I think this is something that people watching can relate to. And I'd love to hear your guys' watching your thoughts in the comments as well. Like you said that comment, you went traveling and I know that was part of your thing. And someone a while ago sent me a link to something on Reddit where a bunch of people I don't know were essentially bashing me. And someone was saying, how can you take her seriously? She went traveling and that's what healed her. I'm sorry, I can't backpack my way out of this. I'm like, oh my goodness, do you know how hard I worked to recover? It was so much more than I went travel. And I know that's not what you meant, but it's still, hard not to, get triggered by this stuff and take it personally. And the vast majority of people out there are so wonderful to me and kinder than I deserve and just so supportive, but there are a segment that are not. And we all have this. When you're sick, you can have it in those communities, these forums. You have hecklers, you have doubters, you have people trying to take you down. And then, people like yourself and myself, the more public we make ourselves, the more we open ourselves up to this. So what's your experience of dealing with this? And how do you deal with people who are just being, unsupportive and rather nasty?
Yeah, I used to get really worked up over this, but then, after a handful of videos on my channel and the first couple comments I read it, because people were saying how could you give people this false hope? How could you tell them that they're going to get better? If people have had this for 10 years, why would you mislead them like this? And I'm like, man, I thought you're against this illness. If you're so against it, why do you sound like it's PR team? Like you're defending it. Like I'm trying to help you get out of it. So you sound like it's your sponsor or something. Like, why do you keep defending it? I'm trying to get you out of this. So I just found it very interesting and ironic. So
oh my goodness.
Yeah, for every 30, every 40 comments, there's maybe one really bad comment. And before I even read it, there's people answering the comments like, no, Miguel didn't say go increase your activity like crazy and like ignore your symptoms. He said this and this. So people are like actually defending what I teach on the channel. But for those people, I feel bad for them because that means they're in a place where they're closed off to this information, like completely closed off. Not even closed off, but like going against it. And I just think to myself, I'm like, well, I'm here recovered. I'm telling you what worked for me. So how could you tell me this doesn't work if you're not recovered? So it's more so just, shining a light, putting the magnifying glass on all the positivity, because 99% of it is positive. There's always going to be that 1 or 2%. Yeah. And for me, it's almost like, it's just, I don't want to say entertaining or amusing, but it's interesting to read the comments because I'm not going to lie. At some point, I was probably that person too. I wasn't commenting on videos, but I was thinking it when I was watching these videos. Yeah. Because I think Toby, like he was making videos back when I was sick. So I'd watch his videos and there would be doubt. And I'd be like, is this really as simple as it is? This can't be. Like, no way. It has to be more complex. But then as I got better over time, I realized, like his principles are right. So I think there's a term that's very true. Hurt people or try to hurt people. And when there's lots of pain inside, then they just need an outlet. And I don't even fully blame them because I understand what it's like. So I don't take it too seriously. I just brush it off. Just like I used to brush off my symptoms. Any of these stressors come up, I'm like, whatever. It is what it is.
I think there's another example of all the stuff we learn recovering from illness. It still keeps serving us as we go. But I mean, we have this no matter what we're going through. And I know, and it's heartbreaking for me when I talk to people who are still very sick and they're in this and they tell me about how whether relatives or maybe people in their chat groups are just, not being supportive or maybe even outright being cruel. And it's very upsetting, which is understandable. And, now that we're deeply immersed in this digital world, I think having those skills to deal with strangers on the internet is more and more important. I'm always curious how people deal with it. And, when I first started, it was really hard. And some comments, some things I would read would make me cry. It was really, I was really impacted from it. And I was scared of my YouTube channel when I first started it. Like I was scared to open it. And when I would open that comments section, because when you have a channel, on the back end, there's a comment dashboard where you just see them all at once. And I had to do all these mental exercises to prepare myself to open it. And like you said, 98% of it was positive, but I think everyone watching, we all know this, that those nasty ones seem to have more power if we let them, if we're not careful, than all the positive. It really can get through to through to you. But over time, it's another skill that I've learned to be able to, now I don't bat an eye before I open my comments. I don't worry at all. And, sometimes there's still some that get to me, but for the most part, it's okay. And I read 50 Cent's book, Hustle Harder. And he said in the book, he's like, I want to be friends with everybody. I want to get along well with everybody, but we don't have to. If you don't want to be my friend, that's okay. It's like, I'm not afraid of getting hit. And I just kind of hung on to that. I'm like, take a shot at me. It's okay. I'm not afraid of it anymore. So
with anything in life, there's going to be people who don't really believe in you. Maybe even right now, maybe the doctors don't believe in you, but it is what it is. If you, truly want to get better and you keep putting your best foot forward and you don't give up and you just keep rolling with it, eventually you'll get better. It's inevitable. It's just a matter of time. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you get better. That's what I always tell people. Just a matter of time.
It's been really great talking with you. I'd love to, wrap this up with, like I always do, for people watching, most of the people watching right now, I'm sure are still facing some sort of health challenge. So what would you say to those people watching right now?
Yes, I would say, I've been there before, and everybody who has recovered has been in that dark place before where they felt hopeless, like there was nowhere to turn to, but they kept going. They kept going. Even when there were times when they felt like giving up, they kept going. And there are going to be times where you do feel like all progress is stalling. You feel like you're going backwards, but always have that vision for that future. And if you hold that vision in your mind long enough, I think it's just a matter of time before you reach that place. Spend time learning things that can help in your recovery. Watch the things on my YouTube channel, CFS Recovery, watch Raelan's channel, surround yourself with positivity about this and surround yourself with solutions about this, right? If you fill your mind with those things and surround yourself with that, then it almost becomes normal to recover when you see it happening all around you. So I think surround yourself with positive things, watch these videos, educate yourself, and never give up. Just keep on going.
Thank you so much, Miguel. That was really well said. And for people watching, all of his information is in the video description. So I really encourage you to expand that and take a look at his Recovery Jumpstart program, at his newly released book, Thriver, Not Survivor. And we'll have links to his incredible YouTube channel, his Instagram. He puts out so much content. I love your Instagram. I get so inspired by all the things that you put up, and you just have really creative, really down-to-earth ways of sharing things. So thank you for all that you do, and thank you so much for your time here today. It was really exciting to have you back on the channel.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you so much. And I'll see you guys next time.
And to all of you watching, if you enjoyed this, I will put a link on the screen here to another playlist that is full of full recovery stories, just really inspiring stuff. And you can see what's working for so many different people who felt hopeless and felt like they had tried everything, but eventually did find ways to get their health and their life back. So thank you for watching. And as always, whatever you're facing, keep going, hang in there. You know you've totally got this. And I'll see you in the next video.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Yep. Get the nerves. I'm getting nervous. Now.
Oh no, I still got nervous too. It's crazy after how many videos we've done. Thriver, not survivor. Oh, now I gotta blah. Okay. I'm gonna start that again. My own videos, I always do some kind of like jiggle in the beginning and trying to shake it off. I'm like, okay.
No worries. Feel free to cough. Please.
I was trying to like catch you in a break so we could make it sentence, and
I just go. When I get talking, I just go. So
I believe that. Oh, cut that out as well.
Editor, cut that out. You're gonna be busy, editor.
Yeah. I've got this mic that I have to be so close to for it to work, but then I keep hitting my chin on it.